Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money. Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Hello, you're welcome to today's edition of Money Radio on Leadership Podcasts. Money Radio, of course, is that program that brings to you the latest developments in Nigeria's business and economy cycles and issues of businesses around the world. My name is Innocent Odo, and today we're going to take a very important topic and discuss the matter as it concerns the leveraging technology to power Nigeria's industrialization drive. It might interest you to know that in 2014, as part of the effort by the federal government to raise the industrial level of Nigeria, it initiated the Nigerian Industrial Revolution Plan in order to harness the potentials of Nigeria in this sector to grow the economy of the country and, of course, make the nation competitive in the global community. And it's on that note that we once again welcome you to this very important program, and we're going to look at the issues of how the country can leverage the use of technology to power the nation's industrialization revolution. Now, in the country today, it has become incumbent on the leadership of the country. It has also become incumbent on stakeholders in the technology sector to put heads together and come out with something really tangible, especially as we go into the 2023 elections. Nigerian politicians are actually joking for power at all ramifications, both within the state and at the federal level. But one thing remains very paramount in the history of this country. The potential of this nation, we must put them together and ensure that the needed technological drive of the country towards industrialization of the nation must be at the front burner of those who are joking for power at this point in time. Now, it has become really disturbing that a nation as big as Nigeria cannot, despite all the rich potential that the nation has in terms of human and material resources, the nation is still lagging behind in the use of technology to power its industrialization program. We have had so much of this talk, so much of programs, so much of conferences and seminars on how to industrialize Nigeria. But then there has not been any serious or, if you like, concrete plans on ground to drive this industrialization revolution of the country. So we are going to look at why and how the nation arrived at this point where a lot of the industrial bases of the country that we have remained comatose. You take example of the major projects in the country, like the Ajaokuta Steel Company in the country, the Alaja Steel Company in Nigeria, and many others that are associated with steel and iron ore production in the country. They are supposed to be the hub of the nation's industrialization drive. But what happened to this very important project that we have had in the past couple of years? It may interest you to know that the Ajaokuta Steel Company, for instance, is one of the flagship programs or projects, if you like, of the federal government to drive the process of industrializing the country. But for over 40 years now, all the investments that have been made in this very important project have had no significant effect or really significant impact in the nation's industrialization drive. One thing, however, remains very, very paramount in the story of industrialization drive, especially as it concerns Ajaokuta Steel Company. The major components of what are needed to drive that very important project have been lacking in all ramification, and all efforts to put them together had met with several setbacks. And the nation has spent over trillions of naira over the past 40 years to ensure that this very important project takes off. Unfortunately, it has gotten to a particular percentage that is reasonable enough to power the industrialization drive. What then is holding a Jakarta Steel Company, for instance, from completing that project that they say is remaining just about 5% to complete the project? We understand that so many things have gone wrong in the formation and initiating that program. We understand that there are also some foreign conspiracies in the way that program has been handled, especially when the Russian company that was the first to take charge of that company, the structures, the systems, and all of the elements needed were not necessarily put in place before the project was constructed. And so when it came to the final point where it will actually start producing steel, that is where we are still standing still. So the nation is really looking up to those who are jockeying for power to come up with projects, programs, and policies that may, in fact, change the narrative for Jakarta Steel Company and other allied companies around the world. It is really disturbing that Nigeria, being one of the highest in terms of iron ore deposit in the world, the particular mineral that is needed to produce steel, Nigeria has it in abundance. If we talk about other allied minerals like limestone, the Nigerian country, Nigeria as a country also boasts of it in large quantity. So where is the missing link? What is holding this industrialization drive? And then we begin to talk about this in details. Sorry, I'm alone in the studio today. My guest is here to join me, but once he comes, I will have a more detailed discussion on the issues. But then we are talking about how nations can transverse all the sectors, especially using technology to boost its industrialization. And I give an example of some countries that have done so well in the steel industry, for instance. While we were really looking at how Nigeria has, in the industrial sector, has remained in coma, we have also seen how some other countries that are contemporary to Nigeria have, in fact, taken advantage of the potential that they have in that sector, really build capacity, and are also contributing immensely to the steel development of Nigeria. Take China, of the world. Take China, for instance. China is one of the most industrialized nations in the world today because it took advantage of its steel potential to build capacity. The speed rails you see in China from Shanghai to Hunan, from Hunan to Guangxi province and all over the country are all indigenous products of the Chinese people using the steel industry that they have developed over the years. Now, if you talk about how much of that is accruing to the Chinese economy, you can talk about billions and billions of dollars that the Chinese have actually made using steel production to drive industrialization in their country. And so they are becoming really self-sufficient in the area of car manufacturing, for instance, because in car manufacturing, you will need steel. In train manufacturing, you need steel. In manufacturing aircraft, you also need steel. So you can see the power of technology in driving the process of industrializing a nation. And today, China is one of the greatest nations in the world in terms of its technology, using it, and of course, using it to drive the industrial base of the country. They're also the world #1 manufacturing country in the world because of all the activities that they have put together to harness that resource called iron ore and transforming it into steel production that have made them one of the fastest growing economies in the world. At the moment, China is the second most, largest economy in the world. And this status of China is actually driven by industrialization. And so China has gotten to a point where even the leaders, like beginning from the time of Deng Xiaoping, when the Chinese society opened up to the economy to the rest of the world during the days of Deng Xiaoping from 1978 till now. So the power of technology cannot be overemphasized in the life of a nation. Now look at China today. They have actually lifted over 800 million people from extreme poverty in the last 40 years. How did they achieve that feat? They deployed technology to industrialize their society. Now, we talk about Japan. during the Meiji restoration of 1867, to be precise, the Japanese also embarked on industrialization using technology to power their economy. And today, Japan is one of the fastest growing industrialized nations in the world. You talk about, let's say, South Korea, for instance. South Korea is another country that is doing so well in the East industrial base. You talk about the Hyundai products, all the products, the car manufacturing sector, and the rest of them. The South Koreans have utilized steel in this sector to build their economy, to build capacity. And of course, how much do they make using steel production alone in a year? South Korea actually earns over $65 billion annually selling steel to other parts of the world, and of course using steel products, in their own country, and employing more than 100,000 people in direct jobs alone. You can imagine what that would do if they also put it in the indirect job sector. What that has added to the nation's economy is very, very awesome, and it's very amazing how nations have deployed the capacities of their people, the technology and industrial base of the nation to build capacity and making their product competitive in the international community. And that makes a nation great. Competitiveness makes a nation great. Your product has to sell. Your product has to give value to the rest of the world before they can accept you, before they can accept your product and make it something that they can use in their own community. But how do you develop products in the country? How do you make your product competitive in the world? You have to deploy technology. You have to expand your industrial base. You have to invest in the industries. You have to invest in the capacity, the training, and all the skills needed by your citizens to build that industrial base to be able to become competitive like the rest of the world are doing. Now, there are so many programs that Nigerian government had embarked upon in the last couple of years, and that we may have to interrogate their essence and the impact of their industrial contribution to the nation's economy. We are all today suffering what they call a fear scarcity. Fear scarcity is caused because mainly because of the fact that Nigerian people have refused to develop that sector, industrialize it, make it more, what would I say, decentralize it by putting more energy to it and industrializing that sector. No wonder the nation is still, at this moment, actually importing the product that we have in abundance. Nigeria happens to be the only country within the OPEC cartel, that is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries in the world, that still imports what it already produces. Nigeria exports crude oil and then bringing back a refined product, paying so much subsidies as a result of that, because all the refineries that we have in the country, you talk about the Kaduna refinery, you talk about the Port Harcourt refinery, you talk about the Warri refineries, all the national refineries, 4 of them put together, cannot produce what the nation can consume in a day. The nation is said to consume, well, we do not know, the figures keep changing, from 30 million liters of fuel in a day to 60, sometimes to 70 million liters of fuel in a day, depending on who is in charge of the figures. They are just getting more confused about the figures. But that's by the way. So now we consume millions of liters of fuel in a day, but our refineries cannot produce even up to 500,000 liters of fuel in a day. That is a very pathetic situation. Why? Because we have refused to industrialize that sector, to make it open, to deploy energy, to deploy capacity, and ensure that we take advantage of what is happening around the world to benefit our economy. Because we have refused to industrialize our economic sectors, now the nation is suffering from serious backlash. Today, Nigeria is one of the countries producing oil in the world, but Nigeria cannot, in all honesty, benefit from the international crisis that is associated with oil production in the world. Yes, there's a war going on between Ukraine and Russia at the moment, very devastating war, I must say, but it has also thrown up its own opportunities for those who are actually selling fuel to other parts of the world. Remember, Russia is an oil-producing country. Even though it's not a member of OPEC, it also has very significant contribution of oil that it's sent to the world. But right now, many countries of the world, especially European and Western countries, are avoiding Russia's oil and also trying to use sanctions to cripple Russia's economy as a result of its invasion of Ukraine. And that has thrown up enormous opportunities for Nigeria and other OPEC nations. As I'm talking to you at the moment, Saudi Arabia, which is one OPEC country, has in fact raked in nearly $50 billion from the time that this war started over 6 months ago to this moment. And they're still raking a lot of money. But then Nigeria cannot, in all honesty, gain anything out of this situation, because the nation has refused to industrialize, because the nation has refused to liberalize, because the nation has refused to take advantage of technology to improve its productive capacity in this sector even. So every sector of Nigeria's life is actually suffering a serious backlash as a result of the fact that the nation and its leaders have not deemed it fit to invest in human capital development and industrialization, to invest in what it takes to do research and development in this area, so that we can build capacity. Nigerian people all over the world are known to be very brilliant. They have shown flashes of brilliance everywhere they go to in all parts of the world. In Europe, they are the leading lights of European countries. In South America, in Asian countries, Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, in the Middle East, all over the world, Nigerians are shining stars in all ramifications. You talk about ICT, Nigerians are great. You talk about science, technology, and innovation, Nigerians are great. There is no area of Nigeria's life that Nigerians cannot, in all honesty, make impact if the right environment is created. So what exactly is holding this giant of Africa that is standing on its clay feet? It is because of certain policy failures, policy inconsistency, policy somersault. And so the needed industrial drive had failed because we have not been able to harness these resources and, of course, put the things in proper perspective to grow the nation's economy. And so, well, it is not all bad news because Nigeria has always, like we say, there is hope. Nigerians are also living in that hope because anybody that loses hope actually has lost it all. So the Nigerian citizens are now looking up to opportunities once again to see if leaders that are coming in 2023, what are their industrial policies? What are their policies on science and technology? What are their policies on innovation? What are their policies on competitiveness of the economy? And how do they grow? For instance, talk about climate smart agriculture. You need technology to drive that. That's another aspect of the industrial base of the country. You talk about even the way the textile sector, the garment textile sector also needs to be industrialized with the modern equipment, modern technology, with skill and, skilling up the people, giving them new methods of doing things. All these things are how nations grow their economies. But then look at the textile sector. In the 1980s or thereabouts, the Nigerian economy actually thrived also. The textile sector contributed a lot of in terms of the GDP of the country. It also was said to have provided nearly 500,000 jobs, direct jobs for the Nigerian people. That was in the 1980s. But today, if you look at that sector, despite all the effort being made by the Central Bank of Nigeria to revive it, it's still far short of what it used to be. The efforts are still ongoing, but the things are that the investments are not coming because of the poor environment of enabling environment that has associated Nigeria's industrial activities in the last couple of years. And so we are, as a nation, are faced with this mammoth challenge to make sure that in the 21st century that the countries of the world are talking about post-industrial world, Nigeria is still not able to measure up to its industrial potential. So we are on the march again in 2023 as a media organization, as a platform, the Leadership Podcast. We are trying to set agenda for those who are joking for power, that it is not necessarily convenient that you come as looking for the power. You tell us you're going to industrialize the country. We must ask you how, and you must show us the details and the graphic picture of what you're going to, that could be very discerning to Nigerian people. Now, hopefully, the Nigerian people have become very, very aware. There's this resurgence of the reawakening, politically speaking now, that the Nigerian people, especially the young people who are the bulwark of the society, are beginning to wake up from their slumber and asking the questions that are needed at the time that they are needed. So any idea whose time has come has actually come to shape the direction and the circumstances of the nation. So let's hope that Nigerian youth will continue to sustain the momentum of trying to reshape the nation, refocus the nation, reorganize the nation, and then re-strategize the ideas that can transform the country into an industrial base using the latest science and technology platform that we have in the world today. I'm being told that my time is up, but I think we've been talking about how to leverage the technology to power Nigeria's industrial revolution, which is a very important aspect that can transform the country from an agrarian society into that industrial society that we're all yearning for. I have to call it this is where we call it a day on the program, and we'll continue to interrogate these issues until a solution is found. We promise you once again that we're going to have a very bumper edition when next will come with our next edition of Money Radio. Stay blessed and goodbye.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.